Now available in paperback and e-readers. John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. One of my viewers left a comment on my live stream with Mr. Chris talking about dating and courtship, saying the tone of my voice doesn't change. Well, the tone of my voice doesn't change in any discussion that I'm having on social media because I understand how important it is to navigate through my emotions and maintain control over myself. Now, this was a hard lesson I learned way back in 1987, and it's one that made me understand I needed to be in control of myself, because if you're not in control over your emotions, you can go out here and do something that can lead to you losing your freedom just like that. Because all it takes is for a black man to lose control over his emotions, and he can wind up losing everything as related to his entire life. And this was a lesson that I learned way back in June of 1987 when my brother bought me a Usagi Yojimbo #1 comic, and I made the mistake of taking that comic book to school at IS 148 where I was attending. And once I took this comic to IS 148, what happened was one of the kids from another class heard that I had this comic, which I thought was worth a lot of money at the time, and they wanted to go and offer me a chance to put my stuff in his gym locker at gym class. And after I went out here and put my stuff in that guy's locker at gym class, because I didn't have a lock at the time, what happened was this Usagi Yojimbo comic wound up stolen, and I was goaded on by a whole lot of other kids to keep fighting over this comic, and everything reached a whole violent climax in a project parking lot where everybody was watching me fight this kid. And as I was fighting this kid, I wound up having a cop grab me by the shoulder, put me in a police car, and as I was being put in this police car, I was driven around, and then eventually they let me out around my old elementary school, CES 132, and it was at that point that I realized how little something can lead to you basically winding up possibly losing your entire life. And from that situation, I wound up having to deal with the dean and everybody at the school, and it really made me think about how I basically put my freedom in jeopardy over this comic book. And what really added insult to injury was two things. One was the day after I came out of that whole violent situation, that Friday of 1987, was that I ran into a girl from one of my classes, and this girl basically was laughing about the whole situation and saw it as a joke. And a Saturday, a week later, my brother took me and my sister to the Forbidden Planet on 59th Street in Manhattan, and there I saw the exact same Usagi Yojimbo #1 that I thought was worth a whole lot of money, and it was on the bottom rack of that Forbidden Planet comic book store for cover price. And it was at that moment that I realized something my mother told me on that Friday, that I needed to maintain control over my emotions, because if I didn't maintain control over my emotions, what could happen is I could go out here and act out in a way that could put my whole life in jeopardy, because the things that we think are so important really don't have value when we think about more important things in our life, like your intangibles of manhood, such as your character and your integrity and your dignity and your self-respect, and more important things like your freedom. And at 13 years old, I was putting my intangibles of manhood, like my dignity, my self-respect, and my freedom, in jeopardy all over a comic book that I thought was worth so much, but that comic book really wasn't worth anything, and I was willing to go out here and fight over a comic book that basically was only still worth cover price in a forbidden planet in Manhattan. And it was from there that I learned that I needed to maintain control over my emotions and not let people get me worked up. Because if people can get you worked up, they can go out here and create a situation where they can benefit at your expense. And the whole thing about being emotional for a man is that people are always looking for an opportunity to get an advantage over you. So I understood at an early age I needed to maintain control over myself, and I needed to maintain control over myself because if you don't, there are a whole lot of predators looking to take advantage of a situation, and they don't care if you get jammed up in that situation as long as they get what they want. And again, from my experiences in junior high school, I learned that people will go out of their way, and if they can find the right buttons to push, they will go out here and push those buttons in order to get a reaction out of you. And if they can get a reaction out of you, they will find that combination of buttons or buzzwords to push and get you to react in a way that winds up with you acting in a way that is detrimental or harmful to yourself. And even as I dealt with that in 1987 at 13 years old, I saw a lot of guys winding up getting themselves jammed up over women. I mean, in that time of the crack epidemic, I saw a lot of guys get themselves jammed up because some female decided to tell their man about some dude, and this dude, who was supposed to be their boyfriend, would get all emotional, wanting to take out a gun and kill somebody over something a woman said. And I saw many men winding up losing their lives on one side, losing their freedom on the other side. And this female who instigated all this went on to go out here and get her back blown out by another dude. And this is all because this guy didn't know how to control his emotions. Now, I understand that I cannot control others, but I can control myself, and I can control myself to the point where I don't let anybody get me to the point where I start to become emotional. Because if a man goes out here and starts to become emotional, what happens to that man is that man is showing weakness to other people. And when a man shows weakness to other people, what that does is give opportunists an advantage to see where they can find the buzzwords or the buttons to push to get control over a person, and then use that person as either a weapon or a tool to advance themselves at that individual's expense. So this is why the tone of my voice doesn't change, because I understand that if I go out here and start getting emotional, what's going to happen is that people are going to see that they can go out here and find the right buttons to push to get the emotional reaction that they want. But a man has to maintain control because he has to respond to individuals, because when you respond to an individual, you are maintaining control over yourself and you are navigating through your emotions. Yes, you may feel about certain things, but you understand you cannot act on those feelings, because if you act on those feelings, that's going to reflect on you negatively. Because if you react in a certain way, it's going to reflect on you negatively. And this was the lesson I learned back in June of 1987, that I cannot react a certain way, because if I react a certain way, this is giving other people power over me, and I cannot allow people to have power over me, because if people who are not are interested in my best interest look to get power over me, what they're going to look to do is go out here and use me as a tool and a pawn in their chess game, and I get discarded off the board and lose important things like my dignity, my self-respect, and most importantly, my freedom, and they go on to live another day. And again, there's a textbook example of this to me with Will Smith, who lost control over himself as related to his dysfunctional relationship with Jada Pinkett. Will Smith basically let Jada Pinkett go out here and goad him into reacting emotionally at the 2022 Oscars, the biggest night of his life, the night that would have led to him being elevated to becoming a part of Hollywood royalty. And instead of him being elevated to that high status, he embarrassed himself because he had no control over his emotions. And because he had no control over his emotions, he went out here and reacted to Chris Rock's joke. And as he reacted to Chris Rock's joke, what he did was storm up on that stage and slap Chris Rock, costing himself not only his membership at the Academy, being banned at the Oscars for 10 years, but also lost an important intangible of his manhood, which was his dignity, his self-respect, and basically the entire world saw him lose face as a man in the social circles. And sadly, this happened to Will Smith at 54 years old, and I could relate to what happened to him because it happened to me at 13 years old. But thank God I was able to understand what mistake I had made at 13 years old and made efforts to go out here and change before I could embarrass myself in the world of professionals. And again, this is why I don't go out here and get emotional online when I'm on social media, because I understand that when I'm on social media, my behavior reflects on me and it reflects on my web presence. So I need to remain calm in any situation, even as others are getting emotional. This is something that I did when I was on shows like the Obsidian Show and guys would get emotional. And even on the debacle of the 2019 Passport episode that I did with Obsidian, I remained in control because I understand that I have a lot to lose, and if a black man gets emotional, he can lose a lot, especially in this white supremacist society. All that people want to see is a black man get emotional, because if a black man gets too emotional, what people will do is weaponize that and use that as a justification to go out here and punish a black man. And this was something I didn't see back when I was 13 years old, because I was so caught up in this comic book that my brother gave me that I couldn't see that there were more important things out here than this comic book, and that I was compromising my intangibles like my dignity and self-respect in an effort to take respect from bullies who were trying to take from me. But I didn't understand that sometimes you have to let something go in order to keep your intangibles of character. So I understand why I cannot go out here and get emotional, because again, there's a lot to lose as related to my professional image and my professional reputation. There's a lot to lose, again, because if you have a web presence and you go out here and you start getting emotional, what you're doing is creating a button out there for others to push, and they will go out here and look to push that button and try to get you emotional. And when you get emotional, what they do is weaponize that against you with all sorts of campaigns. So this is why I go out here and keep the same tone of voice and keep in control, because I understand that there are more important things out here than going out here and getting emotional over a subject. Because what people want to see with a black man is they want to see a black man getting emotional, because this basically proves a lot of racist points about black people being violent and out of control. And what I want to do is keep taking my power and keeping in self-control. And you'll get some people out here saying, oh, I talk like a robot. No, what I'm doing is maintaining control. I'm navigating through my emotions and not letting my emotions dictate a situation, because I understand that there are more important things as related to me that I want to present out here. And with some people, what they will see is the positives of it. They'll say he's always in control of himself, while these other guys are getting emotional. He's always calm out here, even though these guys are losing it. And that's because I understand there's much more for me to lose by expressing emotion, because an emotional man is a person that people see as a tool they can use. And I've run into this even with other family members and even in job interviews. I mean, I remember before I was working at Strive, they were asking me why didn't I show any enthusiasm. And again, I knew that I could not be emotional, especially when I'm dealing with homeless people. I cannot go out here and be super emotional, because my whole mindset is focused on results. And a guy who's emotional on a job, again, if he's too emotional, he's coming from a position of weakness. Whereas a man who is focused on his job and focused on the goals he wants to accomplish, he's not really going to come at it with emotion. He's going to come at it with a critical thinking mindset. That's the way I saw jobs, but this is what leads to me having issues with some employers that I used to interview with, and even family members. They would want me to be this emotional guy, but again, a man who is about his business is not going to go out here and express too much emotion or even any emotion at all. And he's going to go out here and present a serious demeanor, and he's going to present that in the tone of his voice. And the tone of his voice isn't going to change, because that asserts, again, calmness, that asserts discipline, and it also asserts authority, because a strong male figure doesn't change their voice or need to raise their voice in order to gain respect. No, they get respect because their actions define that, because they have integrity with their actions. They treat others with respect. They are consistent in their actions, and everything about them is consistent from the tone of their voice. And again, that consistency is the thing that gains a man respect and makes him presented as somebody people need to regard. So the tone of my voice doesn't change because my character doesn't change. I'm not going to go out here and get emotional with anyone. I mean, I even had comic YouTubers say, oh, you need to get more emotional in videos. But no, I'm not going to give individuals any sort of place where they can weaponize my emotions against me. And this is something everybody needs to learn. Again, you have to have strong discipline and self-control, because if you don't have self-control, others are going to take control over you, and you don't want to get to the point where you're getting super emotional, because when you start to get emotional, what happens is you start not really thinking critically, you start reacting to the situation. And again, this is where others look to take your personal power, and when they start taking your personal power, you start to go out of control, and they are the ones manipulating you, and you can't allow others to manipulate you, because they are not acting in your best interest. If they're looking to manipulate you, that's when you're dealing with predators, and you don't want to get preyed on. And this is what I learned way back in '87, because at that point, at fighting over this comic that was only $2, again, a $2 comic compared to my freedom, This is the lesson that I learned hard from that incident at IS 148, that a $2 comic almost cost me my freedom, and I don't want to ever be in a place where I lose my freedom in any situation. And nothing on this earth is worth losing your freedom, and the way you can lose your freedom is to lose control over yourself. So I try to make every effort to try to remain in control at all times, because I know that the way to get opportunities is to have strong discipline. Because if you are somebody who is disciplined and in control, then people will see you as somebody they regard and respect. And this is what I'm trying to do, build my professional reputation. And I do that by going out here and using this same tone of voice, speaking to people with authority, speaking to people with respect, and speaking to people in a way that I believe will allow me to connect and resonate with them. And those who don't want to be connecting with what I'm saying, they want emotion, they want somebody to be out of control, because they're looking for that series of buttons to push. They believe if they get the buttons to push, they can get me upset and get me acting crazy on social media. But I understand that what I put on social media is a reflection of me, and that's why I'm very careful about what content I put on this channel. Yes, there are some subjects that really make me upset, but I'm not going to put those on here, because again, that's a reflection of me, and I need to reflect a professional and intelligent image, because I want to present the most positive image of black manhood and black masculinity out there, an image of black manhood and black masculinity that can inspire and uplift others, because that's part of my mission on the SJS Direct imprint. I want to create positive stories about the black experience and diversify the black book market, and the way I do that is presenting a positive image of myself, a positive image of black manhood and black masculinity, a positive image of a man who can go out here and maintain control over himself, because there are goals that I want to pursue. I mean, if I want to pursue those goals, I need to maintain control of myself, do things that will go out here and allow me to continue producing content, allow me to go out here and present views that will allow me to appeal to a larger audience. These are the things that I have to do. And again, I maintain that tone of voice because there are more important things I want to do. I want to get a book that's a bestseller at some time in my life. I want to go out here and reach readers and change their perception of self by letting them see a larger world of the black community with the books that I write in fiction. And I want to do a whole lot of different things. I want to be able to finally make a full ISIS graphic novel now that I've done a John Haynes and a Steam comic. I want to go out here and produce more than fantasy novels. I want to do comic books. So if I want to pursue the goals that I want to do, I understand that I have to have discipline to do those things, and I have to be able to respond to people and not react to them. And I take the lesson I learned back in 1987, back when, on that day in June, that Thursday in June, very important, because I understand that I came this close to losing it, and I don't want to ever put myself in a place where I wind up losing my freedom again. Now, if you want to pick up some of my positive black fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the Steam series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, my vampire novel Eternal Night, my black business novel Recipe for Success, or my black sorority novel The Thetas, or my men's issues books, you can pick up all of those books in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to pick up my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, you can find that comic on Lulu.com right now in paperback. And if you want to pick up my first full digital comic, Esteem No Good Deed, you can find that comic on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to help me be able to publish my next comic by helping me pay for some of the art, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for $15 or more to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available on Lulu, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.